Hello, everyone. Welcome again to the 2 and 2 podcast. We're so excited to be able to offer you this monthly encouragement, and we're here again with our fearless leader, Blake Switzer. Blake, it's good to be with you again.
Good to be with you too.
And again, guys, as you're listening, you can watch on YouTube. You can watch on our social media platforms. You can also listen on Spotify. And so make sure you click those subscription bells and notification turn-ons and all that good stuff. So hit those up so you make sure to get when we release the next episode. And so, Blake, I'm excited about our next topic today. It's something that's been a focus for us this year, and it's our 5 vision priorities. And I'm so excited about talking about these more and more. We hit them heavy in our Gateway to Gateway, in our new members class. We talk about them a lot in our staff. Can you give us a little bit? And so we quiz each other in our staff meeting. So I'm going to quiz you today. So can you tell us what our 5 priorities are?
I can.
And just how they came about?
Yeah. So, well, I'll tell you what they are first and then how we got there. So the first one is we want to invite people to Christ and the church. We say we want to relate to our community and culture. We want to apply the Bible to real life. We want to cultivate authentic relationships, and then we want to challenge each other to deeper commitment to Christ. So the way that came about really was just spending some time rethinking and kind of refocusing on, okay, what exactly is the target for us? Because I know we want to make disciples, right? We want to win people to Christ. We want to make disciples. But just specifically in our church, what has God uniquely, given us a passion for, given us giftedness for? And looking back at where we've been, I think, there's kind of bounced around a little bit. I'm like, we just need to focus a little bit and get a little bit more specific about what the target is, because, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. And I think sometimes in the past, we've maybe not been real clear what we were aiming at. And so this gives us some things to come back to and say, these are 5 priorities for us as a church that we want to really focus on.
Yeah, and it's been extremely helpful for me to communicate to my leaders in different ministries, but even Gateway to Gateway, as we talk what expectations are, what you can expect out of Gateway, how you can get plugged in. But this also gives them some teeth of how they accomplish those expectations. And I think that's been a key component for me as we have new members joining and getting plugged in, that we're setting those expectations and seeing how God can work in the midst of their individual ministries and their ministry to their families. And so it's been neat to see these 5 priorities, this vision, as an encouragement to others. And so that's what I'm hoping it is today as well. Yeah. And so we're going to hit, this is going to be a 2-part series. This month we're going to hit on invite and relate. And so let's talk about that a little bit. Why is invite such a key component of who we are as a church? And why is that part of our vision?
Yeah, well, to begin with, because we started the church, and if we didn't invite, we would have literally nobody there. So, when you're starting from scratch, you have to do that. But here's the thing: that should be a core component of what we do as believers, anyway. And there's a lot of scripture that points to that. 2 Corinthians 5:20 talks about how we are ambassadors for Christ, and He's making His appeal through us. So God's designed it to where He invites others into relationship with Him through us. We're the mouthpiece for that. So knowing that, that's kind of the theological, foundation for that. But there's a practical side to that too. And I go back to the beginning stages of our church. We had 35, maybe 40 kids and adults all together. And of course, the desire is to grow. And we've seen that happen over the years, but that only happens as you invite. And I was just thinking back to, what it looked like back then. Maybe it's a little different than it does now. We would go out and go door to door and, put flyers on doors and things that, you really don't do so much anymore. But the image that I still have in my mind is 2-year-old Brooke going with me door to door with her little flyers and walking next to her daddy and going up and sometimes occasionally maybe we would knock on doors. Sometimes we'd just put flyers on doors. And if we ever knocked on a door, she would just stand right beside me and be my little buddy, And now she's getting married here in a few months. So It's pretty crazy how time flies. But just that whole, that culture from the beginning is, You got to invite. You got to look for opportunities to do that. And, you never know when that's going to happen. I mean, back in that same stage of life, we would occasionally go to McDonald's, which now I look at them like, oh. But anyway, I don't spend a lot of time there now. But
I'm the
but
opposite.
we did.
I'm there every day,
you got little
all day.
kids, so you're in that phase of life. And so we would go to McDonald's, and there's one that had those play sets, that you climb up and go all across and everything. And back then, this would be hard for you to imagine watching me get up and down out of chairs now. But I actually could bend well enough to crawl through the play sets back then.
I'm going to need you to prove it.
No, I can maybe find a video. But I would go up with her, all the time up into those play sets, and I'm crawling around. And next thing I know, there's a little boy that's her age that's just following us everywhere. We get out, and he grabs my hand and holds my hand over, and I'm thinking, okay, this could be, this could not be good or could be good. Walking over to Mom, I'm like, hey, I promise this kid just came up. And, well, that started a conversation, and that family was part of our church for over a decade.
That's cool.
They just came out of that. But I'm thinking just where you are looking for opportunities to invite.
And I've learned a new invite strategy is I'm going to take Carly with me door to door, and I'm going to teach her just one little tear come out of her eye and say, please come to my church.
Right.
And just see if they can say no to that.
I'm pretty sure they could not.
Yeah.
I know I can.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Another important application of invite is inviting people to Christ.
Yes.
That's
huge.
something that's been evident as part of Gateway from its beginnings. There's been times in the life of our church that we've been effective. There's been times in the life of our church that it's been a dry season and something that has not been a major priority. I'm excited that it's become over this past year a deeper commitment to that and making that a priority. So I want to talk about that a little bit and encourage people to share their faith. And as we've been talking about in a sermon series currently right now of being transparent and using your story. Right now we're in a season where we have some of those stories.
We do.
And so I want to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, it's exciting. And I'm glad you bring that up because to me, the more important of those two is inviting people to Christ.
Yeah.
And the easier one is to invite someone to church, which is good.
Yep.
That's a good thing. That can be a good first step. But it doesn't need to really be, the ultimate goal is not to get someone to come to church. The ultimate goal is to introduce someone to Jesus. And so, looking for those opportunities, you have done an amazing job of really challenging our staff and kind of helping us refocus. One of the things that we incorporate into our staff meetings every week is a question, what opportunities have you had to share your faith, or what opportunities have you missed to share your faith? And so it kind of creates that culture. We've gone through books together, but that has been a good refocus for me, even because back when I was in seminary, when I did my PhD work, my major field was evangelism, and so that's always been, I guess, a heartbeat and a passion. But quite frankly, practically speaking, outside the walls of the church, that's something that I realize I need to refocus on more. I need to get back to being more bold about that. So, and I'm always encouraged. Certainly when God opens opportunities for me to share my faith with people, but I'm even more encouraged when I hear it with other people. Yeah. And I knew we were doing this podcast today, literally last night, right down the hall. Our Connect group was meeting, and Vida, one of our Connect group members, she's from Ghana, just has a real love for the Lord, a passion for the Lord. And she was sharing a story. She is an aide on a school bus. And she sees that as a ministry. And so she prays for these kids. She prays for parents. She prays for coworkers. And she was sharing that she got put on a new bus with a bus driver from the Middle East. So somebody that kind of felt like, both of them are from other countries and they kind of maybe had that connection. And she had the opportunity to share Christ with him. And I wasn't totally clear if he accepted Christ, but she used the phrase, I was able to lead him to Christ. But then just talking about, her brothers and my sister lives there, my brother lives there. And she said, why don't you come with me? I'll introduce you to my brothers and sisters. And I was even joking about it. They look just like me. But just that, I love that heartbeat of wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, I may have a job, but my real mission in that is to share Christ.
Yeah.
And man, if we could have more of that,
that's right.
We'd be in good shape.
Well, and I think the thing that's been so encouraging for me, and just as it became part of the rhythm of our staff, is the encouragement I get from our staff sharing opportunities they've had, but even just being vulnerable and saying, I was at this place and it hit me that I needed to, and I didn't.
Or I chickened out. There've been a few of those. I knew I should have, and it just didn't.
I chicken out a lot, and I also take those opportunities a lot.
Right,
And
right.
to be able to hear from both and to know I'm not in it by myself, it made me more effective in making that a priority in my life. And just now I know we have door-to-door salesmen in our neighborhood
Yeah.
like crazy. And every opportunity is an opportunity for me to share my faith.
Yeah.
At the very least, get to pray for somebody. And even at the very least of that is just hoping that they know somebody cares
Right.
and loves them.
Yep.
And so seeing those opportunities and had the opportunity last year of a young man who had zero church background, zero thoughts on who Jesus was, and had the opportunity to talk with him and see him become a believer. And not only that, of just seeing this instant passion and his desire to immediately go home and share with his mom as well. And I think that's the component we miss sometimes in the invite of when you have the opportunity to invite, how that inspires and encourages others as well.
Yep.
And I think I love that's why it's a priority, because there's so many people that need to know who Jesus is and what he's done for us. And the second they're captivated with that love, they can't wait to tell somebody else.
Yeah.
And I draw so much encouragement for that. So
That's awesome.
I love that a priority is inviting people to church. Some of my best friends are because somebody invited them to come to Gateway, and I've met them through an invite that they've had.
Right.
And, seen people in our church who have come to know who Christ is, and now they're here. And invite has to be a priority. The second priority we want to touch on today is relate to our community and culture.
Yeah.
What does that look like for us as a church? Why is that a priority? And let's dive into that some.
Well, I think it's a priority because it opens the door for the invitation to Christ and to church both. But and some of that goes back to just my story growing up. We did go to church some, but when we did, frankly, I thought church people were weird.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I connected. I didn't relate to them very much. And I just felt like things were a little bit out of touch. And so as I came to know Christ, and by the way, one of the reasons that I did is because I met individuals that I could relate to. Mm-hmm. I had some Sunday school teachers that I thought, okay, these are people that I'm really interested in getting to know, and they took an interest in me and loved me, and that kind of drew me in. But so I think that it really opens the door, to try to remove any obstacles. Think about, I was quoting from 2 Corinthians a moment ago, but 1 Corinthians 9 is where Paul talks about becoming all things to all people. Mm-hmm. To the Jews I became like a Jew, to the Gentiles I became like a Gentile. But he tried to remove any obstacle, and that's kind of what I think of when I think of relating to our community and culture. Mm-hmm. When somebody comes into our church, I don't want them to feel like they just stepped back in time 50 years.
Yeah.
I don't want them to feel like they're speaking a language that I don't understand. I mean, we had a guy years ago before we started Gateway that was part of an organization. He invited us to a ceremony where they were doing something for him and instituting him into this new leadership position or something. But they had all these rules and sayings, and it was like their own language. And I just thought, this is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life. And then the thought that hit me is, this is how a lot of people view church. They walk in and they're like, I don't know what these people are talking about. They're speaking another language. I don't want that. I think it's important for us to relate well so that there are no barriers to the gospel being communicated.
Yeah, and I mean, we see examples of that over and over in Scripture. The things that pop into my mind immediately is just Jesus relating to everyone. You see him teaching in the temple. People are so enamored by what he's saying and who he is that they bring their children to want to hear. And the disciples start rebuking them, say, get your children out of here. And Jesus says, no, bring them to me. It's like he's relating to kids as well. You see him at the woman at the well. And here's this lady that is so far away from God, and he has this instant connection with her because he lets her know what living water is. And he's relating to this woman who nobody else can relate to, so much so that she's coming to get water at a time of day where nobody else can be around.
Right.
And he found a way to connect with her.
Yeah.
And so you see those examples all the time.
Definitely.
Of relating to community, relating to the culture, and you see it through Jesus. And one thing that sticks out to me is like mine and Natalie's first thing that we came to here was a church camp out. And for me, it was so cool. Like, we hadn't even started our first day, and y'all invited us to come to that. And we got to meet so many neat people and neat families and start relationships right off the bat that you could tell relating to one another and doing things that are different and outside the box was okay. And it made us feel extremely comfortable. And we met people like the Johnsons and the Howards and so many families that we've had now long-term close relationships with. And because you were doing something that could relate to your community. Grab your tents, get some hot dogs, we're going to play some volleyball, just come and be different. And it was so much, it wasn't what most people think of church. And like you were talking about, just very structured, liturgical things. But let's relate to people and give them something, an opportunity that can remove obstacles from them coming to church. And if that's grabbing a tent and a hot dog, then let's do it. And so I've loved that that's been a part of who we are.
Absolutely.
And so as we close out, and again, the next podcast will hit on the next three, but I just want to encourage folks as they're listening, as they're watching, to start to really be intentional about the invite component and the relate component. How do you relate to others? Who are you inviting to church? Who are you? What opportunities do you have to be able to share your faith and to share your story with this week? And so I want to encourage them to make that a priority as we're trying to make it a priority in our church.
I agree. And as we're talking about relating, just don't be weird.
Yes. I try really hard and I fail all the
Me
time.
too. It's okay.
Try not to be weird, but if you're not successful, it's okay too. But again, folks, I'm so thankful that you're tuning in. I hope that you get encouragement and gain encouragement from this. Again, you can listen on Spotify. You can watch on our social media platforms. You can tune into us on YouTube. Again, make sure you hit the notification bell, and so you're reminded of when these podcasts come up. But we hope they're a great tool and resource for you, and we'll see you next time for part 2.